This time, I will call to order the February 6, 2023 meeting of the Stillwater Utilities Authority. Item 2 on the consent docket. Item 2 on the agenda is the consent docket. Is there action?
Move to approve the consent docket.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please vote. Vote of 4-0. The consent docket's approved. Item 5 is general orders. Mr. Barth is here to help us consider approval of professional services agreement with Black & Veatch for design around the water treatment plant.
Yes, good evening, trustees. David Barth with the engineering department. I'm here tonight to talk about the next step at the water treatment plant with the improvements that we're making. This slide here on the cover shows an aerial view of our water treatment plant looking to the west. Some of the items that are in this shot we'll be touching with this project. This long white cylinder over here next to the red pickup is the carbon dioxide storage tank, and that will be replaced, and the improvements to the CO2 injection system. Also over here by this, there's a green building back here on the upper right-hand corner. You probably can't see my cursor. Anyway, inside that green building is our own ozone system. We'll be making improvements to the ozone system with this project as well. But I wanted to get to our slide that I showed last August just to kind of give you an update. This is that phased improvement plan that we shared with you. The green projects, so the recovered water pump station, the finished water pump station, and the lagoon improvements, those projects are in final design right now, and we're scheduled to start construction on those towards the end of the summer. The cathodic protection of the CAW pipeline from the plant, well actually from OSU's plant up to our plant is finished water, and then from our plant up to CAW Lake. That project, the contractor's been selected and they're finalizing their submittals, and then they'll begin construction soon. The red there is the additional raw water storage, which 2 weeks ago you all authorized us to get started with Carollo engineers on that, and we held a kickoff meeting with them last Friday. We've started reaching out to the City of Perry, to the Friends of Lake McMurtry. Bill Millis talked to the Conservation District today about the dam, so we're already getting our legs under us on that project. Very excited about that. And so tonight, I'm here to talk to you about what you see in yellow. And that's a chemicals project that involves a new lime system. It upgrades our chlorine system. It adds a new ammonia system in a chemical building that's up to the north there, as well as we'll have some other chemicals in there, sodium hydroxide, sodium hexametaphosphate. We're going to, like I said, update or improve our ozone system and redo our carbon dioxide system. And all of this is with the intent that we would be able to accommodate future demand over the next 50 years. So we'll be doing this in a way that's either planned to handle 24 million gallons per day or easily upgradable. We'll have the space and everything there ready to go. So this is the scope of work I just mentioned. So a brand new lime system. We selected Black & Veatch back in 2017 to look at several things at our plant. And so one of those was initially was to look at the lime feed system. And the lime feed system that we have is at the end of its useful life. We're actually going to do a temporary project here very soon to make sure the lime feed continues to work well until we get this project constructed. We'll be making improvements to the ozone, chlorine, carbon dioxide systems in that new chemical building. The design is scheduled to take about 14 months. We actually are hoping that we will build the lime feed system sooner than the other parts. One, because we're going to use the EPA or the Congressional Directive $5 million that we received through Senator Inhofe's office that's being administered through the EPA. We're going to use that for the lime project, and then the rest of it, the funding right now is unknown. This next slide shows our strategic plan alignment and the funding. Again, the funding for this design and evaluation and bidding and construction phase services will be funded with the ARPA money that we received from the federal government. We received about $8 million over the last 16 months in 2 payments, and we'll be using those funds to fund this effort with Black & Veatch. With that, do you have any questions before I make a recommendation?
Trustees?
Do I understand correctly that this is the, this does not include the construction?
That is correct.
Okay. And do we have estimates of, at least for the lime feed system, what that will cost?
We don't have an estimate from them yet. I'm guessing it'll be in the $6 to $7 million range, but I don't know anything beyond that. So probably a little bit more than the $5 million that we are getting from the congressional directive.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
What's your recommendation?
Recommend a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Black & Veatch for preliminary and final design, bidding, and construction phase services for a new lime system and chemical feed building at the water treatment plant. Authorize the general manager to sign the agreement and approve the budget amendments appropriating, or excuse me, a budget amendment appropriating $4,695,000 for the project, which includes the agreement amount of $4,267,958 and a contingency.
Thank you, David. Trustees?
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 4-0. That takes us to item 5B, which is consider approval of a professional services agreement with Plummer and Associates for design services related to the 6th Avenue project.
Yes, good evening again. So this is, earlier you heard Candy talk a lot about the 6th Avenue widening project that ODOT is planning for our community. And so as part of that, we have to relocate utilities. And as she's mentioned, we've already engaged a consultant on the west half of the project, and that's because we already had that consultant engaged doing some water and sewer work for the College Gardens area, and that College Gardens area ties right into the western half of the 6th Avenue project. So tonight I'm here requesting that we engage with Plummer Associates for the east half of the project, which is basically what you see in this photo, is starting at near Washington and going all the way east to the Stillwater Mill and Agri Center. The scope of work is they will identify locations where the existing water distribution and sewer collection systems conflict with ODOT's plan for widening 6th Avenue. They'll make recommendations and provide design, bidding, and construction phase services for relocating any conflicting water and sewer infrastructure. And then we've also got included in this project some support for our operations group. You heard James Driscoll earlier this evening talk about how during COVID that they had a lot of turnover. And so they've got several projects that we're able to help with this project. So installation and replacement of valves, abandonment of some infrastructure that we're not using any longer, and some sewer point repairs in other parts of the city. Evaluation and design will take approximately 12 months. And, you know, I just want to say, I know you put a hold on or you took a pause on the ODOT agreement. This project with Plummer, we're going to have to relocate utilities no matter what. And we're not going to ask Plummer to look at anything that we haven't decided on as a community that this is what we're going forward with. So we will ask Plummer to go ahead and start work on what they can, but we're going to need to have these utilities relocated before ODOT lets their project for bid. I will also say that I know you do have a voice here, and some of you may not remember, or maybe you weren't here, but I remember about almost 20 years ago, the city, or ODOT, was widening and redoing Highway 51 west of town. And if you remember, the eastbound lanes were much lower than the westbound lanes. And there was an old bridge that crossed the creek. And so when they redid that, the design that they came to the city with, I believe, was one solid pavement section. So concrete all the way across between Sanger and Country Club. And if you go out there, the grass medians are still there. So I'm pretty sure that Dan Blankenship, who was the Development Services Director at the time, came to the council and asked for their blessing to to contact ODOT to ask them to keep those grass medians instead of the pavement section that they were moving forward with, which was, essentially 5 or 6 lanes all the way across. So anyway, a piece of history there. I do think it's worth taking a look at that and making sure that that we get what we want. And we are, it's great that they're paying for it, but we have to live here. So this is the sorry, I digressed a little bit. The strategic plan alignment is on this slide, as well as funding. So the funding for these services will come from the water and sewer funds, because we're both touching the water and sewer systems in the city. And with that, I would entertain any questions before I make a recommendation.
Thank you, David. Trustees, any questions?
So I understand. I wish that last week when we were talking about the other one that we knew kind of more about where we were with ODOT's plans. We didn't have maybe the context to ask these same questions. But I understand that we have to move utilities either way. Would there be, and that we probably aren't going to measurably change what ODOT has on their 60% plans, but is there any concern that we would start something that we wouldn't need, or that we would spend dollars that don't need to be spent if we haven't, if we don't have more information from
Yeah,
ODOT?
I understand your concern. We'll definitely, I'll definitely work to protect against that. There's certain things that we can't, like the sewer lines. The sewer flows from north to south. It's going to cross the highway, so we're still going to be crossing the highway. We may just have to lower or change directions in some places, but we're going to have to make some changes. Water lines that run parallel to the highway, they may have to move slightly, north or south, depending on where they're located, or they may have to move a block over, like Candy mentioned. But until we know for sure what the pavement project is, it doesn't make sense to start. I mean, there's some things that the consultant can start now, like survey, or looking at the survey that's already been collected for the project and started building up their data, for the project. That stuff has to be done anyway. So I think just engaging with them now, getting them started, and especially on those other maintenance things that we're doing to help support operations, they can do that. It doesn't impact the ODOT project at all.
Are these bid as a time and materials contract, or are they bid lump sum?
Which are you talking about?
To Plummer, how is it their work? Is it billed? Like if we approve this now,
right,
and the scope changes.
It's an hourly rate
time
schedule,
and materials not to exceed.
But they have it's a not to exceed agreement, and they've given us a fee basis of their fee that shows this is what we think it's going to take to do conceptual design, preliminary design, evaluation, and we pretty much hold them to that.
So there would then potentially be an opportunity as they're working on, like you said, kind of laying out the survey and kind of getting their existing conditions underway. There would be an opportunity to say, okay, now we have some more information. Well, they'd have to, because they're going to need ODOT's plans at some point.
Yes.
But there would be an opportunity for us to not pause necessarily, but just take a second and make sure that.
Yeah, our agreement's pretty clear that, they move on things when we tell them that they can move. And so we give them a notice to proceed, and they can work on some things. Then they'll give us deliverables, and then they really can't move forward until we've given them the blessing and said, you can move forward to the next phase of the project. So
it gives us a little time for us to get our bearings with ODOT.
That is correct.
Okay.
And yeah, we're going to have to make sure that and Plummer worked with us on Perkins Road, so they're familiar with ODOT and working with ODOT to relocate utilities. So,
and I would assume there's some conversation, maybe some give and take with, if they say, well, under this design, if ODOT says this is how we're going to do it, and they go, well, then we'd have to move utilities all the way to 7th Street, or we'd have to, is there discussion that kind of goes back and forth while these things are being designed to say, well, this is what would have to happen with utilities if you do it that way, but if you change it a little bit, maybe we could save, I don't know, is that happening?
I think there's some of that. I think that one of the other things that's interesting, and I heard a presentation not long ago, And I know Candy talked some about the schedule. The last thing that I saw on this project is that they plan to build it in phases. And they plan to work on maybe the western intersection and maybe one or two other intersections at once. And that's one project. And then maybe working on 6th Avenue Western to McFarland or something like that. And then maybe and breaking it up in several phases instead of Perkins Road where you got half of it, basically demolished for the whole mile. That's not their plan here, is to take the whole 2.5 miles or 2 miles or whatever it is and tear out half of it at a time. And I think it's going to be several contractors, not just one.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
different project.
Further questions? I do remember when the highway was split like that. That was the worst place to learn how to drive your manual car to try to turn left. That hill was a killer.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. If there's no further questions, what's your recommendation for us?
Sure. Recommend a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Plummer Associates Incorporated for evaluation, design, bidding, and construction phase services for utility relocation along 6th Avenue, Washington Street to the Stillwater Mill, and maintenance projects including valve replacements, installations, and abandoned lines. Authorize the general manager to sign the agreement and approve the budget amendment appropriating $768,000 for the project, which includes $585,755 for basic services, $112,133 for additional services, and a contingency.
Trustees,
I move to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 4-0. Thank you, David. Any reports from the officers of the board?
No, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn SUA. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the Stillwater Utilities Authority is now adjourned.